live in interesting times. Today's stories. UN Secretary General discusses the situation in South Sudan at the African Union Summit. World Health Organization warns of a global shortage of antivirus masks. Macron wants a strategic dialogue for Europe on nuclear deterrence. Using tech training to bring work to refugees in Bulgaria and beyond. Primary elections help boost New Hampshire local businesses. Warren and Buttigieg make their case ahead of the New Hampshire primary. President Trump says Congress should expunge his impeachment. Plus, the Women's Diplomatic Series, or WDS, talks culture, conversation, and career with Philippine Ambassador to the United States, Jose Manuel Romualdez. This is Eagle News coming to you from Washington, D.C., bringing you stories from around the globe. I'm Ace Ramirez. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres discusses peace and security in South Sudan, Libya, and the Sahel region at the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa.
It is for me totally unacceptable that we are still again in the closing to the deadline of a new period that was declared and there is no agreement on a number of issues. It's time for South Sudanese leaders to agree, to cooperate, and to deserve the wonderful people they have.
President Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar have failed to break a deadlock over key terms of a power-sharing agreement with just 2 weeks until they are to form a unity government. The pair have already missed 2 previous deadlines to settle their differences and enshrine a lasting peace to put an end to 6 years of bloody civil war that has left 380,000 people dead and millions more in dire poverty.
I have only one simple message to the leaders of the country. Think about your people. Respect your people. You have not the right to continue a confrontation when your people is suffering so much. It is your moral and political responsibility to put an end to this and to find the agreements that are necessary to make South Sudan enter into a normal life.
Kiir and Machar signed a peace deal in September 2018, pausing the bloodshed that erupted in 2013 when the president accused his former deputy of plotting a coup. They agreed to come together in a coalition in May the following year. However, disputes over territory and security arrangements dogged negotiations, and the deadline was missed, followed by another 6 months later. In November, the pair were given 100 more days to resolve these sticking points as fears grew that the tenuous ceasefire could be derailed if a breakthrough was not achieved. But progress has been piecemeal as the new February 22 looms nearer. A UN Rights Commission in South Sudan warned Friday that violence was on the rise in parts of the country and that efforts to unify armed factions under the terms of the peace agreement were faltering. The World Health Organization chief warned on Friday the world is running out of masks and other protective equipment against the novel coronavirus.
As a result, there are now depleted stockpiles and backlogs of 4 to 6 months. Global stocks of masks and respirators are now insufficient to meet the needs of WHO and our partners. There is limited stock of PPE, and we need to make sure we get it to the people who need it most, in the places that need it most. The first priority is health workers. The second priority is those who are sick or caring for someone who is sick. WHO discourages stockpiling of PPE in countries and areas where transmission is low.
We need solidarity not only between countries, but we need deep solidarity between the public and the private sector to ensure that we do not see a future in which health workers are forced to take care of patients without protective equipment. That is not something any of us wish to witness.
WHO said prices for some items were up to 20 times higher than normal, and Tedros told reporters the problem was being made worse by inappropriate use of masks by people who were neither sick nor medical staff. After speaking to a supply chain group of producers and distributors on Friday, Tedros praised those companies that had promised to sell only to medical staff. WHO earlier this week said it had started sending masks, gloves, respirators, protective isolation gowns, and test kits to countries requiring assistance. At least 31,000 have now been infected by the virus, which has killed more than 630 people. Maria Van Kerkhove, head of WHO's Emerging Diseases Unit, said that overall, some 82% of cases were considered mild, 15% severe, and 3% critical. She said, and I quote, "Less than 2% of the reported cases have died," adding that those who have died tended to be older and have underlying medical conditions. Tedros also said that some countries were still failing to share clinical data on confirmed cases of the virus and urged them to do so immediately. Tedros also pointed out that for the past 2 days, the number of reported cases of the virus had declined. He said that this, and I quote, "Good news, but we caution against reading too much into that. The numbers could go up again." Emmanuel Macron urges Europeans to participate fully in future arms control negotiations by joining a strategic dialogue on the role of French nuclear deterrence. The French president delivers his vision of defense strategy in a much-anticipated 90-minute speech to an audience of officers at the École de Guerre in Paris.
Les Européens doivent également pouvoir proposer ensemble un agenda international de maîtrise des armements. Sur ces questions, la France mobilisera les partenaires européens les plus concernés afin de poser les bases d'une stratégie internationale commune que nous pourrons proposer dans toutes les enceintes où l'Europe est active. Dans la recherche de la paix, la France est attachée à la logique d'un désarmement qui serve la sécurité et la stabilité mondiale. Et elle a un bilan à cet égard unique au monde, conforme à ses responsabilités comme à ses intérêts, ayant démantelé de façon irréversible sa composante nucléaire terrestre, ses installations d'essais nucléaires, ses installations de production de matières fissiles pour les armes, et réduit la taille de son arsenal, aujourd'hui inférieur à 300 armes nucléaires. Soyons clairs, si une négociation et un traité plus large est possible, nous le souhaitons. S'il est bloqué par certains, nous ne saurions rester à l'arrêt. Et les Européens doivent être partie prenante et signataires du prochain traité, car il s'agit de notre sol et d'une discussion qui ne doit pas passer par-dessus notre tête. Je souhaite que se développe un dialogue stratégique avec nos partenaires européens qui y sont prêts sur le rôle de la dissuasion nucléaire française dans notre sécurité collective. Les partenaires européens qui souhaitent s'engager sur cette voie pourront être associés aux exercices des forces françaises de dissuasion. Ce dialogue stratégique et ces échanges participeront naturellement au développement d'une véritable culture stratégique entre Européens.
Macron called Friday for European nations to play a more direct role in halting a new nuclear arms race, saying they cannot remain spectators against a threat to the continent's collective security. France is now the only nuclear-armed power in the European Union at a time when long-standing accords on limiting the growth of nuclear arsenals appear increasingly at risk. The US and Russia have abandoned the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces or INF treaty, each blaming the other for breaching its limits, and Washington is threatening to quit the New START arms reduction treaty when it expires next year. Add to that China's bid for global sway. There's a strong need for Europe to ensure it does not find itself in the middle of a Cold War-style standoff which, Macron said, and I quote, could jeopardize the peace obtained after so many tragedies on our continent. He warned of the possibility of a pure and unrestrained military and nuclear competition, the likes of which we haven't seen since the end of the 1960s. In other news, a social enterprise in Bulgaria is changing the lives of refugees by providing digital training and freelance jobs to 100 refugees in Bulgaria and another 150 refugees, internally displaced persons, and vulnerable people in Syria and Iraq. Let's take a look.
The services that we provide are related to image and data annotation for artificial intelligence. So that's a very specific niche that requires manual editing of data and images in order to power some of the most exciting applications of machine learning and artificial intelligence, such as self-driving cars, drones, object recognition, facial recognition, and so on. How's everyone feeling today? We specifically chose these types of services just because we wanted the work that we provide to be as accessible as possible and as easy to complete. So that right now the people who are working with us come from all different backgrounds, all different countries, ages, and so on. We make a big emphasis on employing women and providing opportunities to women who are housewives or need to take care of children at home, so that they're also able to contribute to their families and to develop their skills. Currently, we're working with 100 people here in Bulgaria, 80 people in Syria and Turkey, in the cities of Aleppo, Damascus, Gaziantep, and Istanbul, and also 100 people in Iraq, in the north of Iraq, in Iraqi Kurdistan, and also in Mosul. Part of the reason why we decided to scale our model was that we saw that it's working here in Bulgaria and it can be easily replicated in other countries where there is even a bigger need for such opportunities. In countries like Syria and Iraq, we are definitely seeing that we can make a lot of impact on people's lives by providing them with such a freelance opportunity. And of course, there are so many obstacles such as internet access and connectivity or reimbursing people for their work. But through our NGO partners, we're really able to reach the most vulnerable of them and make sure that they're able to access this job and the money that they receive from it.
Up next, primary elections help boost New Hampshire local businesses. Warren and Buttigieg make their case ahead of the New Hampshire primary. President Trump says Congress should expunge his impeachment. Plus, the Women's Diplomatic Series, or WDS, talks culture, conversation, and career with Philippine Ambassador to the United States, Jose Manuel Romualdez. Eagle News will be right back. Please stay with us. Welcome back. This is Eagle News coming to you from Washington, D.C. In the tiny state of New Hampshire, presidential hopefuls seeking to secure votes hold multiple campaign events in small-scale venues ahead of the primary, giving a much-welcome economic boost to local businesses turned into political pit stops.
When I first started, there was, yeah. Every day I would come in, there would be a new candidate. Sorry. Ted Cruz came in, was here one day when I was leaving. Pardon me. Let's see, I waited on Lindsey Graham. Let's see, what else? Trump was here one day, I missed him. I don't know, Lindsey Graham was really nice. He ordered cherry pie, and he was really friendly. Yeah. Oh my God, yeah. It's been insanely busy all day. I mean, which is good. It's good money in our pockets. yeah, definitely keeps us on our toes, that's for sure.
It's been, since they first started coming up, they've been coming in buying the flags, and they usually will buy the larger flags because they want to drop a backdrop for it, whether it's a 8x12 or a 10x15, something like that. Then, of course, they're buying the small ones too. They'll buy a whole array of them for the indoors. You've seen the indoor flags behind them and that stuff. That's what they buy. Let's put it this way, it just makes the cash flow a lot better than it normally would. I don't have to worry about that particular winter because it always happens in the winter because that's when the primary is coming up. But we usually hits, I mean, they've been coming for about a year now, right?
Because we are a small state and we're used to kind of that retail politics where, you know, the old joke is that you would never vote for anybody unless they'd been in your living room twice. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but it is that kind of familiarity that lets us kind of vet candidates.
Meanwhile, U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts and former Mayor Pete Buttigieg of South Bend, Indiana, rally their supporters ahead of the New Hampshire Democratic presidential primary.
Now you're getting ready to go out and knock some doors, do a little democracy. But here's the thing. There's still a lot of folks out there who are really starting to get worried. Worried that this fight against Donald Trump might not be winnable. You know, the way I look at this, I've been winning unwinnable fights pretty much all my life. There are a lot of folks who are going to talk about what's not winnable, what can't be done, and definitely about who can't do it. They're going to talk about it right up until we get in that fight, we persist, and we win. That is how I will be the first woman president of the United States of America.
We may not agree on everything, but we can agree that the time has come to deliver this change before it is too late. And that's what this campaign is about. Because I am the candidate best prepared to defeat Donald Trump. Running against him, I do not believe we can take the risk of falling back on the familiar. And in a divided time in our country, I also don't think we can take the risk of excluding anybody from this effort, of saying that if you're not either for a revolution or a status quo, then you don't fit. I think we're going to defeat this president by inviting everybody to be at our side.
Democratic hopefuls fanned out across snowy New Hampshire on Saturday, campaigning for the state's primary, stopped two on the road to picking a challenger to President Donald Trump in November. The burst of glad handing ahead of Tuesday's vote in the small, predominantly white Northeast state came with leftist Senator Bernie Sanders and 38-year-old moderate Pete Buttigieg, having emerged in a dead heat atop the field in the messy Iowa campus. And in line with their position as frontrunners, both came under sustained attack from their rivals at a feisty debate on Friday night. 78-year-old Sanders was challenged over his age and record on guns, while Buttigieg, the former mayor of a Midwestern town of 100,000, was depicted as too young and inexperienced to take on Trump. When it was all over, none of the 7 candidates on the stage was seen as having scored a knockout punch or made any serious mistake. Buttigieg, a political nobody at the national level a year ago, but now a force to be reckoned with, seemed to revel in his new status. President Donald Trump says Congress should expunge his impeachment abuse of power following his acquittal in the Senate.
That's a very good question. Should they expunge the impeachment in the House? They should, because it was a hoax. It was a total political hoax.
Philippine Ambassador to the United States, Jose Manuel G. Romualdez, said, and I quote, "Look at the Philippines as an independent nation who is a friend to all the countries of the world," as he described the foreign policy of the Philippines before an audience of the Women's Diplomatic Series during an evening of culture, conversations, and career held at the Carlos P. Romulo Hall of the Philippine Embassy. Romualdez highlighted the big picture of Philippines-U.S. relations, which have yielded mutual benefits for Filipinos and Americans in the security, economic, socio-cultural, and environmental fields for over 70 years. The evening concluded with a ceremonial turnover of the WDS donation to the Philippine Red Cross Batangas chapter to aid relief efforts following the Taal volcano eruption. The Women's Diplomatic Series is a non-profit organization consisting of women interested in foreign affairs and international tourism. It holds small conferences and gatherings in collaboration with the foreign diplomatic community in Washington, D.C. That is today's Eagle News. Join us again tomorrow for stories that matter to you. Visit our websites at eaglenews.net and eaglenewslive.com. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/EagleNews and on Facebook.com/Eagle News. Thank you for watching. I'm Ace Ramirez. I'm 1 with 25.